The Palace of Versailles, radiant, immense, and perfectly symmetrical. It was meant to be the crowning glory of civilization, a paradise built by man and blessed by divine right. But within its walls the air reeked of sweat, sewage, and decay. Behind its gold leaf and crystal mirrors hid a secret no perfume could mask, the rot of a kingdom that worshipped beauty while drowning in its own filth. When the Sun King, Louis XIV, moved his court to Versailles in 1682, the world saw heaven on earth. Those who lived inside soon realized it was closer to hell. Louis XIV envisioned Versailles as a theater of power, where every gesture affirmed his supremacy. Architect Jules Hardouin-Mansart shaped the marble. Painter Charles Lebrun filled the ceilings with gods and victories. Gardener André Lenotre sculpted nature itself into submission. Lakes, hedges, fountains, each designed to glorify the Sun King. But there was one thing Versailles never mastered, the simple human need to be clean. The palace had no sewers, no running water, and no proper toilets. When the royal court, some 20,000 nobles, servants, guards, and musicians, arrived, the system collapsed before it began. Marble galleries became makeshift latrines. Curtains concealed chamber pots. Gardens doubled as bathrooms. Even the grand staircases became stained monuments to desperation. Beauty had triumphed over practicality and lost. Eyewitnesses described the air of Versailles as a living fog of filth and perfume. Urine seeped between marble tiles. Rats scurried through kitchens and bedchambers alike. The scent of musk and ambergris mixed with something far more human, the odor of thousands who rarely bathed. Perfume became the weapon of denial. Each noble wore layers of scent so thick that stepping into a ballroom felt like inhaling incense in a tomb. Perfume hid disease. Perfume disguised rot. Perfume, in its way, became Versailles, beautiful, intoxicating, and deceitful. The first full winter at Versailles was catastrophic. Freezing winds turned the fountains to ice. Water froze inside basins, and the little washing that occurred became impossible. Chamber pots overflowed. Waste froze, thawed, and froze again, sealing the palace in a crust of human misery. Courtiers still dressed in silk, still danced, still bowed. They fainted from the smell during audiences with the king, but etiquette demanded silence. Even Madame de Maintenon, the king's secret wife, confessed in letters that she burned incense day and night, yet could not banish the stench. She changed gowns 3 times daily, not for vanity, but because her fabrics absorbed the smell of waste. Louis XIV, enthroned in splendor, barely noticed. He saw the glitter, not the grime. He mistook perfume for purification. Every dawn began with ceremony, the lever du roi, the king's rising. Hundreds of courtiers gathered to watch him wake, dress, and pray. It was considered the greatest honor to hand him a sleeve or a glove. But beneath the fragrance of the royal chamber lingered another scent, the one no one dared mention. There were no bathrooms for this parade of nobility, so they improvised. The corridors behind the king's apartments reeked of secret accidents and chamber pots hidden under drapery. Even the Hall of Mirrors, that masterpiece of art and architecture, often smelled more like a stable than a sanctuary. The irony was divine. The palace that symbolized civilization had regressed to medieval habits. Only the marble was new, the filth was timeless. For the women of Versailles, filth was not only endured, it was worn. Their lives were a performance of discomfort. Corsets tightened until breathing became labor. Layers of brocade and lace trapped heat and sweat. Baths were rare. The belief persisted that water spread disease. Instead, they powdered, perfumed, and fainted. To relieve oneself in such gowns was nearly impossible. Some waited hours, days even, to maintain appearances. Many suffered chronic infections and kidney pain. Still they smiled, powdered white, their bodies prisons of etiquette. Each duchess and lady-in-waiting was a mirror of the palace itself, gilded outside, decaying within. Food, too, bore the mark of corruption. Versailles' kitchens were vast, but far removed from the royal dining rooms. Dishes traveled long, winding corridors, often contaminated by waste. By the time they reached the tables, meals were cold or spoiled. Courtiers fell ill frequently. Dysentery, food poisoning, fevers. Yet every night the banquets continued, because spectacle mattered more than health. The courtiers feasted beneath chandeliers, surrounded by the sweet smoke of incense meant to overpower the smell of decay. They drank wine to forget the taste of rot in the air. No one complained, for complaint was treason against illusion. When disease swept the palace, the Sun King sought not doctors but perfumers. He ordered stronger scents, more flowers, more incense. To him, fragrance was order, and stench was chaos. He could mask chaos. Therefore, he believed he had mastered it. Incense filled the chapels until courtiers fainted. Perfumed oil burned in every hallway. Yet beneath the layers of musk and myrrh, the palace festered. Even the priests began blessing the air rather than the people. Versailles had become a holy site of denial, a cathedral of scent built on rot. By the next century, filth was so common it no longer shocked anyone, until it struck high society itself. In 1755, during a glittering reception, Madame de Pompadour, Louis XIV's most powerful mistress, ascended the grand staircase surrounded by ambassadors. Halfway up, she stepped directly into a pile of excrement. Her silken shoe was ruined, her composure nearly so. The court froze in horror. No one spoke, no one laughed. And the next morning, a royal decree was issued, not to clean the palace, but to ban light-colored shoes inside. The Sun King's heirs had learned nothing. Instead of addressing the cause, they refined the disguise. By the late 1780s, pamphlets spread through France calling Versailles a golden sewer. Writers described nobles who wallowed in filth while peasants starved. The metaphor became literal truth. When the revolution broke out in 1789, the people who stormed Versailles expected to find treasure. Instead, they found filth, rotting floors, stained walls, air thick with centuries of waste. The mirrors still shone, but the smell told the truth. The revolutionaries discovered what the monarchy had hidden behind perfume and prayer. The empire was already decomposing. For months after the royal family fled, workers cleaned the palace. They filled cartloads with debris and waste. Chamber pots were found behind walls, excrement beneath furniture, and even decorative urns filled with refuse mistaken for art. Versailles was not just morally rotten, it was biologically decomposing. The cleanup took months. Tapestries were burned. Fabrics soaked in sweat and stench were destroyed. Marble floors were scrubbed until the designs faded. Even then, the smell lingered, soaked deep into the porous stone. Workers wrote in letters that no perfume, no holy water, no incense could conquer it. When the last cart of filth was hauled away, what remained was a shell, a monument stripped of its illusions. The palace that once symbolized perfection now stood as a warning. Civilization, it seemed, could gild decay but never erase it. After the revolution, France faced a dilemma. What to do with the corpse of Versailles? It was too sacred to destroy, too tainted to inhabit. So it was reborn, as a museum of glory. Walls were restored, ceilings repainted, floors relaid. The filth was erased, the mirrors polished, and the story rewritten. Visitors would see kings and queens, not the waste that surrounded them. The new Versailles became a cleansed ghost, a curated fantasy of perfection. But history has a scent of its own, and it lingers. Letters, memoirs, and records still whisper the truth. The Versailles that tourists see is not the Versailles that was. It is the mask, not the corpse. Versailles was more than a palace. It was a mirror held to human vanity. It showed that power obsessed with image will always rot from within. The nobles of France perfumed their corruption, powdered their sores, and called it beauty. Their world collapsed, not because of war, but because it stank too long of denial. Civilization, Versailles reminds us, is not measured by its gold or its art, but by the dignity it affords its people, even in the smallest, most human needs. When power ignores the body rebels. Today, the tourists walk through Versailles with awe. They take photos in the Hall of Mirrors, marvel at the gardens, breathe in air sweetened by modern restoration. But the ghosts remain, faint, silent, lingering. If you stand still long enough, you can almost smell it. Not the rot itself, but the memory of it, because Versailles never truly purified itself. It simply buried its filth beneath marble and myth. And like every empire that mistakes splendor for virtue, it leaves behind a warning whispered through time. No perfume lasts forever. Eventually, even gold begins to smell.